Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs, gang. Hope all is well with Dr. Contrast here and hey, Captain Nemo. Really glad you had a chance to join us here. And Chip and Doug, thanks so much. I just want to spend some time today, gang, going through some things we did last Friday. We had a live stream with the Shadowkin on Friday night, going through some little subtleties on this whole program. This is what I refer to now as a QuadraWing. Still waiting for some individuals to maybe kind of submit some names. We had some good feedback last Friday night, but I just thought I'd take the time today to go back into some things that we were looking at last Friday night and then spend a little bit of time about some revisions made from that session on Friday. Really don't plan on doing a lot of drawing today. I just want to get some good feedback, perhaps from those of you who are listening in here, about what you think in terms of the overall impression, the content, and the actual stance and personality of the machine we're trying to really create here. So I went back and looked at some of the sketches here, and I just pulled some things up here for us to look at, just to review. And this is the one we started with last Friday. This one had a lot of interest, I think, in terms of just the right stance. It had a lot of what I refer to, and let me go back just a couple of minutes for a little bit of reference referral here. I just did a little research about 2 weeks ago. I was doing some research on getting a good start in this program. And it occurred to me, kind of a nice format to work with would be a dragonfly. Not that we're going to call this a dragonfly, but that precept or that biomimicry piece was interesting to look at how the structure is laid out with a very, very strong head form, eyes, and so forth, and four wings, upper and lower, and really interesting set of circumstances to work with. And the overall stance of that, with a very wide body and a real long trailing tail section, had an interesting intrigue as far as looking at a design pattern to work with here. So we based that premise, or this whole concept, based on that dragonfly concept, and then little by little, we kind of evolved the shapes and some of the forms together to get to an arrival such as this. And I think that's one of the things we looked at. Notice the wing drop is kind of critical in terms of what the dragonfly does. That rest, they kind of go to a detent system when they drop the wings 2 or 3 steps. And that's part of the process. But I think the idea here was to get a really good sense of scale with a lot of uphill run, for example, with this very gun turret in the back section here. So that was part of the process as well. And looking at very, very, very strong engine nacelles with an engine drop and a little bit of a split line right here where the actual wings would articulate. We'll show you a little bit of that later. And to give it a sense of scale, really what happens here, this is probably about a 25 to 35 meter ship. So giving a little bit of sense of scale really helped. So I think that's what I wanted to start with today, just where we were last Friday in terms of overall impression of the shape or the character of the ship itself. And down below, a little bit of a variation in the theme where I went to a side and elevation, a little bit shortened, it's not quite really where the stretch should be. But again, give a little bit of sense of scale. And then there's a very round cockpit, this very high engine nacelle, and this lower engine, for example, and then the twin wings coming up off of that, a la Dragonfly. So, but from this sketch, Friday night, last Friday evening, we did a series of little thumbnail studies. I'll just go through these guys. We did some engine nacelle studies. Rather than being, look at this, the original sketch. Notice how the engines are just dropping off the fuselage, and then they're parallel about 30 degrees to ground. So in this case, got a low, currently, oh, hey, very good. Thanks, Chip, because lay low. Thanks for being on board anyhow. So really interesting how when we look at some of the submissions coming back from the audience on Friday night was to go to more like a big, powerful engine nacelle and really lift that thing up off the fuselage here. So it comes up the wing route, the fuselage route into this engine nacelle, and we had it articulated in 4 points, just a high point and then a shift in here, for example, that allowed the wings to move up and down and change positions. And then all of a sudden, we're going right back into here, an elevation, so to speak, where that actual form would take shape. And then just a little bit, again, a little detail and maybe a different variation on the engine nacelle. So this is the first pass from the feedback from the audience we got. Laying low too, but that must be the not a meeting. Very good. We'll just lay low and hang in there, gang. Thanks for joining us. So anytime you have a comment about what you see here, folks, Chip, Nemo, Doug, feel free to join in. I just need your help here today. I'm going through a review process for my own self here to kind of bring myself back up to speed about what the nature of this beast is. I think we're close, but I'd like to do a little bit more refinement work on this before we go into a really full color system and get some print work done and some poster graphics done for this and with a good name as well. So, but again, this is nacelle studies, and I'm not quite sure yet about this high lift, for example, the engine nacelles. You'll see later what I mean by that. They create a nice tune, maybe to kind of flatten this out on the fuselage and get more wing drop. That's the battle here, to get that thing to lay down and really have this idea of having this dragonfly process, but actually at speed it lifts and goes over a swept back wing system. All that to be discovered later here. So first pass from the feedback from the group on Friday evening last week, they liked the idea of big powerful engines. So that was the first sketch we did. Then we went into a study, but what did they think about the cockpit study areas? We began to notice 23 variations, for example, a little bit more blister-like a la Dragonfly. Doesn't quite really follow in the format of the machine itself, in my opinion, and that really was a consensus of the group as well. Then the hooded system was interesting. We kind of looked at that as a possibility, and getting a little rounder with some of the shapes in there was nice too. But the winner of the consensus seemed to be this guy here for cockpit study. So time reference here, we'll show you a little bit later on how this combination, and I brought the two together and widened it up a little bit and put some guts to it. It really seemed to help the process here. So there's phase number 2 in essence, and the cockpit studies. And then going to the third one, the really tough one was this tail gunning system, this turret. Really not quite happy yet with what is taking place with that. That's a very delicate study here. Is it a dual? Is it upper, lower? Does it pivot in one area? Is it, again, elevation? And this is another thing we're looking at here. So I think that's part of the whole mystery of looking at those 3 areas, for example, the engine nacelle system, the cockpit character, and again, this gun turret at the rear of the machine. I think we've got the stance right, and I think we've got the gesture right. It's finding all those nice little details that come in and really make a huge difference in getting the pieces done. So that's where we were in review form last Friday night. So from that point on, I went back in and really went back. Let me just show you this for a moment here. I'm going to bring this one back and we'll show you. This was the last study we did last Friday evening. Now we're going to this process here, where all of a sudden I moved into a whole different set of circumstances here. Let me just organize this a little bit better. I just really went back in and looked at a way of looking at this shape from the feedback again on Friday night. Notice, this is where we were on Friday evening. Look at the difference in the stance. We still have that same overall character, but it has less of a droop, but more of a real high-powered engine piece than the engine drop or the wing drop on top of that. So let me stop here for a moment, gang, and get your feedback on this. What do you think about this process from there to there? What do you think? Nemo, what do we have? What about a Hornet Sting? A little bent forward like a bee, wasp, hornet. Yeah, that's kind of, I looked at that as well. In fact, that's a good point, Nemo. Getting less of a round turret, which actually rotates. This actually spins a full 360 for attack purposes. But maybe it has more of a Hornet look or a real violent looking Stinger. That's a good point. Maybe it's a single gun that rotates all the way through. So great input, man. We really appreciate that. So again, notice the difference between the location of the engine nacelles, where they're really low in profile, about 30 degrees from ground, all of a sudden to a very vertical system with a lot of wing root coming off the fuselage itself. So that was part of the whole process as well. And again, I still really think it's really imperative to keep that high California rake, so to speak. So go to the second you hear it. The California rake means it's all uphill, so it has a lot of real nasty stance to it. So that was part of the process there. So let's put that aside for a moment, and we'll bring in some of the more recent sketches. So this was sketch 1, this upper piece, for example, looking at a front 3/4, high engines, wing drop, and then again secondary engines, and then with the dihedrals, that second set of wings back here, for example, a la Dragonfly. Then again, this very notice how I changed the character of the actual module, the cockpit module, a lot wider from where we were initially. Then add a little bit of a round, and that form comes off of this shape. It's over, breaks, and it goes into a real round form. We've been back to normal here. And it is a very, very strong Gatling gun series off the nose piece itself. So let me stop there and get your feedback on that. Nemo, Doug, Chip, if you're kind of looking at it here, say low, but any feedback at all? What do you think about the personality stance here, guys? Are we close to something? I think it's interesting that we've got a stance here. But again, it comes down to detailing this thing and making it look really wicked and evil. So anybody, any comment at all? I'll just hold on a minute here. It has lost a lot of sleekness. Yeah, I think it has. I think that's a good point, Chip. But it's gotten buffed. Yeah, it's a lot stronger looking. I'm not sure if we want to go back to that horizontal engine system or the sketch we did on Friday night. Had a lot of really interesting stance to it. I think there's something about that. There's a really kind of interesting shot at it here. So I'm going to wait the jury out on that guy. I think that's, I might go back to that and look at another practice system, because it seems to get a little bit, especially when you go to this process here, this high and upper, this very vertical high engine mount, it makes it much more difficult, I think, from the point of view of being able to articulate it and move it around. So I do prefer the horizontal engine. Yeah, I think that's a strong point to look at. I'm going to take a real good strong note of that, Chip. I think based on that horizontal engine with the rest of this, do you think that still works pretty well? I think that's an interesting thing too. We could still keep all of this activity around it, but just go back to a much slimmer, meaner looking engine system or nacelle. I'm really thinking about the aggressive look. Hornet has one that's accurate. Curls its body with a sting forward. Yeah, the sting. That whole thing can come forward itself. That's right, Nemo. Good point. The vertical engine intake seems out of place. Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's trying to. The point I made there too, Chip, is this, and just to follow your comment about the vertical engine system, it looks more typical aircraft like you see today in some of the military services. I mean, it doesn't have the same kind of sneaky looking aggressiveness to it. So I think I'm going to take a page out of your book, Doctor, and really go back to that vertical system that we're showing in that first sketch again on Friday. There's something about that droop system, and I'm getting it really strong and long and thin, that makes this thing really, I think, hum a little bit more. And with your comment, Nemo, coming back into this tail section, and maybe it just comes back to a real strong blister, like a Stinger that has a gunning system, or a turret system that rotates and it becomes an attack process as well. So that's good stuff, Chip. Thank you very much. Don't get caught in the meeting here. Just make sure you keep it low profile. So there's a situation here where I had the wings in a rest position, and then in an upper position, a fold position, for example, maybe carrier landing. I could go a lot vertical, much more vertical with this wing, so to speak. But I still think it goes back to this would be a lot slicker if we kept that real long thing engine system. That would be really cool, along with this naval approach, for example, if it's carrier based and those wings really fold vertically, and it gives you a whole new stance to it. So that was that. My meeting is about explaining what a project is. I'm not missing much. Well, that's good, but make sure you explain the project well, Chip. That's great. So there it is with the wings moving up a little bit. So you've got one at rest, one moving up, and then let me do this. And this is interesting. I thought that was really, what made it really unique is when you go to this guy here, giving it a sense of scale. But you notice how now this is really an odd view, because these wings, this side, this left-hand module, these wings are actually going back and sweeping. Notice when you go to the right-hand side, how the whole thing disappears. You pick up some of the mirror here, and it ends it right in here. That's wing zippers, based on what we're seeing here. So that's an odd view, and I think probably tells a story about, is it really going to be one of those situations where you want to go back to a folded system like this, or a swept back, or do you want to keep that in flight, where these wings actually just droop out of dragonfly? Then move them back a little bit, but not too much. But there's some variations. But again, notice how I've really kind of beefed up the cockpit area, which I think is strong. Kept the engine nacelles below the same as is, but I get those really upper dihedrals to really make a real strong statement coming out of the actual fuselage itself. Really like that wing articulation. It looks like an insect sitting there and then preparing for takeoff. Yeah, I think that's, you talking about the last sketch here, Nemo, or this one? Just hang out for a minute here. Yeah, let's see what we got here. The last one, yeah. You're referring to this guy here? That's the one you're referring to, Nemo, just with the wings dropped? Or is it the one below? Yeah, very good. So it's this guy here, right? Now, I just want to make sure we have a good conversation here. And I'm taking good notes as we go through this process today. Actually, both. Oh, good. Well, I think that's, again, do you think, a question for you and Chip and Doug, does that look like, for example, could this system begin to merit itself to be a lot stronger with a very strong horizontal engine system? I just think there's something about your comment there, Chip, about what that engine system could look like. If you imagine this variation, for example, this variation on theme in that process, I think we would have a really good, strong operation in terms of having some real guts to it. So again, that's open for jury, and please feel free to comment as I'm going through the process here. Really, really, very, very helpful. That'd be good. Yeah, I think so too. I think that would make a big change of pace, especially when you add that horizontal system, keep the wings fractured, and then get this Stinger or this operation, this turret system really working well. It'd be great. So that was another sketch that we did. And then let's go back to this one. We had this one all set up, same process again, but that wing articulation, and maybe keeping this process of it and adding that very strong horizontal. It really tells you here, this view really told me that it does look a lot like more slim intakes might help that insect. Yeah, I think you're right. This one, going back just for what it's worth, that vertical system, that uplift on this thing, for what it was worth, yeah, it was interesting to look at. It was a good exercise to go through, but it just reminded me, especially in this format, of what current military vehicle or aircraft systems are like. Not so much the F-35s or the Lightnings or so forth, or some of the 22s, but that same system. What they've done is taken them and hugged them into the fuselage, which I just think it looks way too conventional. Where you go to the thin, slim one, that all of a sudden has a different Star Wars look to it, or a certain citizen look to it. So let me move on here for a second, and I just shifted gears and said, well, what would it look like, for example, if we went through here? And let me get organized for a second there, Dave. What if we went through a process of going from the rear? I mean, this is a very odd view to work with here, because everything disappears, and I think there's the big shift here is this area here gets a really strong look at it here. I think, yeah, you get the swept out look, and I think it's too severe. I was able to strengthen this portion back here, and I think going back to what you're commenting, Nemo, and also Chips, this area becoming much more of a vertical, like a Stinger system with a gun going rearward and being able to rotate could really be cool. So I'm going to give that a shot to look at here. But I still believe that if we took that center fuselage out of there and began to look at that wing graft by adding much more vertical, long horizontal, adding more beef in here and keeping this upper dihedral, which is here and here, the second tier of the Dragonfly, very strong system here, I think, in terms of looking at it. And again, this would all flatten out. This would drop again, and come back to a sweep. So a lot more stance to it, I think, to give it some real evil quality to it. So those are some of the first passes based on last Friday's commentary, and then again working this week on, especially yesterday, taking that commentary on Friday night and beginning to graft it into some of the sketches we're looking at for some of the final work here, moving into Friday night's program with Shadow. Let me go back and get these organized here. So there we are. That's all these guys all unfolded. So let me get these put together as a stack. So I've got the right history. That's one stack there. Let's go back now from that station on. I went back and the little smaller thumbnail studies here, some 8.5 by 11s. And again, pointed out the fact that I still really like the idea that this widening out of the cockpit really strengthened it. Oh, got a note here. What about making that center fuselage, which is supposed to be segmented, actually curl? Not just the tail. Yeah, that's a good point too. And then we'll actually get this guy to actually bend. That would be really cool. Great input. Nice. I don't know about technically engine. In the engine, it might be a little bit tough to do that, but we could get the fuselage, could give a little more flexibility to it. That's an excellent point to look at here. But I think, carrying on here, I think there's another case where the dihedrals, the upper dihedrals begin to move at rest, and they park in a very vertical position, but at speed, they actually drop in and band in behind the engine nacelle itself. Then we have this very strong uphill stance with this turret system in the back here, and segmented in the tail section, and we take that segmentation back through. That's the portion that might bend and move. So that's kind of an interesting point here. Chip 7, a moving fuselage would really bring in the alien nature. Yeah, that would be cool, a moving fuselage. Good note here, guy. I'm going to put a note over here. Pardon me. Adjustable, flexible, segmented fuselage. But again, notice, again, this is where this view really tells the story about that very strong vertical system. If all that disappeared, we had that whole drop all being continuous. I think it'd be a lot stronger, very much so. So there's the first pass at it. Again, I really like the fact that this change of getting a little softer in the cockpit area, more insect-like with this hooded system. And going back to what you said earlier, Chip, last week, I think this idea of this hood being movable and transfer and shifting rearward and forward upon need, very, very helpful. So again, there's an elevation. You're looking at the scale and so forth. There's another sketch. Then went to an overhead 3/4, and this is where it begins to tell the story. I think it's a lot of moving parts, getting into the verticals, maybe a little beefier with these guys. And again, this really tells a story about getting that very soft and maybe stretch this a little bit more, get more segmentation in this thing. But then here again, getting that whole engine nacelle to go stretch and then drop would be a whole lot healthier, I think. Not a bad view. I think we've illustrated it correctly. But it just didn't seem to have enough guts to it. I really widened this out and I really stretched this, and maybe it goes a little further, I'm not sure. about what to do with that. Again, just variations on theme, looking at different sketches and how to put it into perspective based on overhead 3/4 and what we've been talking about over the last few minutes here. Let's go to this one, and then we went to this one, then went to just a series of plan view studies, for example. What would it look like in the plan view? Maybe a little bit too thin here, obviously, but again, some interesting systems here. Notice how that stepping stone system gets a little bit on the tough side to kind of keep simple and more cohesive as far as the design statement is concerned. So we've got one with a very thin fuselage with that same blistered canopy area, but opening this up a little bit, get a little more of a delta in here, and maybe this becomes a process by which we actually take that canard and that system of movability into it. And here are the dihedrals again, the upper wings on this side. These begin to move and paddle according to speed and altitude or whatever the attack mode might be. And then again, this might turn into a very simple, this whole segmentation could this whole process could move. That would be interesting too, to kind of watch that, see that process unfold in this concept. But here, just a plan view study here of what we've got. And then went back into a little 3/4 study again, looking at maybe getting these wings to move a little bit with that very, very solid vertical engine nacelle. Extremely, it's pretty tight here. I mean, it's okay, but I think there's something about trying to go rearwards and notice that wing disappears on the other side. There's a little rough sketch here about putting that piece together. So that was the first pass at it. Any comment here, guys, so far? I mean, what you're seeing? I think it needs to be stretched a little bit more. Obviously, it's just a real fast little 5 or 6 minute sketch here. Just kind of put it look like I want to get into what I'm trying to do today too, in addition to reviewing some of the things we did last Friday night, is also moving into an area where we start to look at maybe some views for final composition and getting into some nice finished 11x17 print work after this Friday's show with Shadow on Friday evening. Any comment down so far? I mean, you've seen some variations here on theme, for example. Here's another. Let's do this together here. Let's see what this does. There's another view of this thing in the 3/4 front. Shows a little bit more of the character of the actual forms itself. Just a little tighter view here. Any comment at all? Yeah, the cockpit is really looking much better. I think it's getting a lot beefier looking, I think, and I think the strong statement being made there, Chip, is effective. We combine that with getting these wings to move forward and getting that really dragonfly, that drop, could be really interesting to work with. What do you think, Nemo? Any commentary at all about the two variations? Definitely the cockpit stands. Yeah, it's really much stronger. I think this is going to be a good character to deal with in both cases. But again, the issue is right in through here to get that whole drop system and that much more horizontal, thin-looking, like the little baseball cap pellet it has. Yeah, I did too. Just a little bit of a cap system to kind of move. And again, your point last week, Chip, was to get that thing to articulate and move according to attack mode. So there we are. And we've already seen that guy. So that's already done. And there's 1, 2. There's 3. There's another variation on theme, a little bit, a little more. Notice how this one a little tighter. So I went back to this view, so to speak, and opened it up just a little bit more. So there's another set here in terms of, let me see if I can get this guy to shrink in here. So there's another view where I actually take a look at this and again, notice how it foreshortens. This needs to get a little beefier, I think, back in there. It looks a little thin. Also like the antennas, lacking a better word. Yeah, the antennas are kind of neat. Just are you talking about antennas, meaning these areas here, Nemo? Those are intended to be actual dihedrals or wings in the previous picture. Oh, you mean these guys? Is that what you're after, the antenna type? Yeah, there you go. I think we'll take that process and begin to maybe graft into this. Instead of being so vertical with it, I just drop them down a little bit here. Maybe they do go a little bit more vertical. That'd give it a little more of an even look. That's an excellent point. And still would maintain that dragonfly character. So good input, Nemo. Thank you. So let's look at this from the point of view of where we are here to here. And notice I just moved the view just a little bit, rotated it to the right a little bit so we can see more of what we're after. And while I'm going through this conversation, I'm taking good notes here, guys, on what you like and dislike. So you're going to be part of the design process there. In fact, you are the design process, and I want to make sure we honor and respect that. So once again, this is all showing the drop. I'd like to take this guy and move it back like we had here once we get some things refined in it, and the cockpit and the like. So let's move that one out of the way. Let's call that a day. And then let's call that a day. And I think the last one we did was interesting. This one was a unique, I think the view I really liked the most. It's a lot more dramatic. Again, we'll modify some of the engine systems and retake some of those pieces and look at them. I lose a 9 near that thing. So that's an interesting part about the view. I think is much better. We actually tilt this thing and get more of an attack mode. And I think this composition, once modified and liked about some of the details we're adding, I'm going to utilize as maybe a composition for a squadron of maybe 2 coming into a dive and attack mode, and let this become part of the can be part of the whole process of getting that final piece done once we get all the little details put together. So I think that to me is the right kind of attack mode. Just imagine this at 11 by 17 with another vehicle behind it and a little bit of atmosphere, cloud systems or whatever in the background. Also, if you ever saw a Green Hornet, just remember the logo. The intake is C-shaped and the tail points forward. I love that. Yeah, I do too. I think the tail point should go forward, no doubt about that. So let's take a second here and play into some of the things you're talking about here. I want to just, especially this tail section. Maybe that tail section comes in, and what if we tried this, just for what it's worth? Say we come back with this guy, and we have that thing actually fractured. It's got more of a break like so. Then we're coming out of that with a big spoon back here. Maybe we take that whole process and lift it. And the underbody here. Maybe we lift this thing so it has more. Till we come back. Let's go back and do this. Go a little bit more rearward with this thing. And that's part of the cannon process. It gives it that reverse sting. I don't know if that's what you're thinking about, Nemo, but that might be a little bit too tall in terms of shape. It could be a little beefier as well. So maybe it's got more of a, like so, and this thing just comes around and has a little bit more of a turret system to it. Maybe it's something like that. Is that what you're referring to, like a reverse stinger? Or is it more of an elevation? Does that thing comes uphill, brakes, it doesn't have that kind of a look. Where you come back off the top of that guy, brakes, comes into the actual body form here, and comes underneath, and picks up the shape. Maybe that all ties in and does that. That could be kind of cool, and that's where that brake is. Just try to put some little details together. What do you think of that, Nemo? Also, Chip, what do you think? Is that a better solution in terms of having that instead of being what we're looking at now? What we have currently is this very round disc. There's a dome to it. Then there's a blister here and a blister there, and out of that grow the cannons. It's a little bit archaic. This might be a little bit more of that evil look that we've got in that stance. So I'll let you kind of be the judge of that, guys. What do you think? So far, so good. I was more thinking about leaving the rear like a tail gunner station, but enable the fuselage to. Oh, I got you. Yeah. So the actual fracture is right here. Let me get a red pen. So you're saying, Nemo and Chip, that this thing actually, that portion right there is where this thing, for example, let me draw it in the plan. Is that what you're looking at? That would actually an option. What's an option? That's true. Let's do this. Let's get another sheet of paper here. So what you're saying in the plan view is that this thing comes back, and then at that point right there, there's a gap. And then that's where the center line of pivot is right there. So that guy right there, I may have to open that up just a bit more. So that opens up like so, where this piece actually comes out and does the following. Let me see if I've got this correct here. There's my center line here, and there's the swing. That would both go right and left. Is that correct? Is that what you're looking at, Nemo? We actually just moved that? Yeah, that is really cool. That I like. That is really neat. So I have to work out what that's going to look like back here. That's a great point. So that thing would go both ways. You can come out the other way. Let's run that across. And with a gunning station on top of that, that could really be interesting. That's great. Good stuff, Nemo. Man, I'm glad you're on board. You too, Chip. Good point. So there's the body form coming through into that area in the tail section. There's the actual pod itself, and this is where that thing fractures right there, and it begins to move. That's great. So we'd have, in essence, this. As that comes down in the body form, it's there, and then it swings over and does that. And it also does that in the other view. That is really, that could be really, that's great, guys. That's an excellent point. Maybe in multiple split points, not only one. Yeah, maybe it does. Maybe it moves, and also have the option of maybe going uphill as well. So you've got this kind of motion, where it swings off that center line, goes right and left, and also has the actual process of going vertically. That's neat. That makes a lot of sense, and I could give this thing a whole lot more credibility in terms of being very evil looking, articulating fuselage, and maybe even multiple split points. Split points in what sense, Nemo? Are you talking about split points up on the fuselage itself as it comes rearward? That could be kind of cool. So the split point would be here in one area, so you can actually move it forward or adjust it, or how would you do that? It actually drops, pivots in a lot of different, yeah, that could be kind of cool. Like the segments of the fuselage. Yeah, there you go. So those always can go as well. So let's kind of get that out of the way. And just for what it's worth, let's try something here. Just for what it's worth. Let me do this, guys. Let me come down the ground here for a second. Some real rough sketches here to kind of get this kind of. All right, quick little gesture. What do you think there, gang? Hey, Shadow, how you doing there? I've been running a demo, so I couldn't chat. Hey, pretty good. Love it when Doc goes quiet. Hey, there you go. Hey, Shadow, just bring up the speed a little bit here. Loving the lean look now. Yeah, I think that's going back to what we did. I'll bring up the speed in a minute here, Shadow. But we're at this is a real rough sketch based on some conversation we had here with the gang. Let me just kind of tighten this down a little. It's a real rough sketch, so pardon me. I just want to get an idea put together here. There we are. There it is. Just kind of get this guy in place. Cockpit. Pardon me, I do rotate the sketch just a bit. There it is there. Got this, I'm gonna get this Gatling gun. It comes out of the nose piece itself. That's kind of cool. Engine nacelle, second number 2. And again, into the cockpit area, a little wider. Again, this blister that comes out of that's all round form. That's rounded. That's kind of gutted here. That's neat. So that's got some merit to it. This comes along and does this. We'll add more details as we go here. A little leaner look. I think this stance, all of a sudden, that to that, to that, to that. All of a sudden, it's got that really interesting looking format to it. What do you think here, guys? So far, so good. I mean, it's a rough sketch, so I just want to get some flavor down here for what it's worth. But I think Shadow, one of the neat things that Nemo and Chip are talking about is getting this whole tail section to actually move itself. Actually, this is what this sketch is doing here. The actual gunning system, the tail section itself is stationary here, but under attack, it actually pivots and also goes up and down. So it fully articulates based on the joint line back on that concept of the idea. So there, we're getting closer to a pretty good feeling here about what this guy is doing. I mean, I'm not quite sure yet that's the way to go with it, but it looks a lot meaner, I think. There's something about that long stance now that makes a huge, huge difference. So, Chef, for just joining us here, thanks very much. Check the Discord suggestion channel, Doc. I will do that. We'll definitely do that once we're done with the broadcast here. Nemo, thank you. So overall, gang, do you think this has got some merit to it? Let me just kind of tighten down some things here. Real loose sketch. And again, this is judgment day for me. Just kind of get a little more engagement conversation about where we've been with this guy over the last few days. I mean, just something about that stance looks a whole lot healthier. Just gotta go back and get this tightened down just a bit. Still have that same uphill gesture. It's still a very strong scale. And to give it a sense of scale, let me just kind of do this. There's ground zero. There's the walker on the inside of the piece, and there's a walker on the other side of the piece here that kind of stabilizes it. A little bit of that comes down out front. That kind of sets it up. And to give it some sense of scale, we're about right there. What do you think, guys? Let's see. Check the deck. Okay, so far so good. There we are. Let's get these two guys out of the way. Pardon me. Get some of this material out of the way here. And let me go back here. For Shadow's benefit here, there's let's hold that sketch up for a second. Let's get through. Wow, yeah, Nemo, that is a moving metal. I will check the Discord as soon as I'm done here. Nemo, it's only meant as constructive critic, Doc. It's awesome to watch you do the hard work while we are all interior designers. No, this is great. I really appreciate the feedback, guys. This is a lot of fun. This is your design. This is the kind of thing you guys are working with, and you've been really great with us in terms of he's referring to the way a bee articulate the string and form. Yeah, that's it. It's alien. Who says that it's metal? Yeah, that's kind of neat. So very helpful, guys. Have this kind of feedback on the chat here as we go. So true. And for Shadow's benefit, let's admit this for a second. Here, Shadow, I just want to bring up the speed. This is where we were last Friday night. Just went through some of that stuff. You like the scorpion tail as well? Yeah, that could do as well. Friday night, gesture looked pretty good. They said that was kind of a nice consensus. Then we went into a series of facelifts. Engine nacelle was one of them, and then the cockpit, and then into the gunning system. And then from that point on, Shadow, I went ahead and put together here a series of sketches based on that feedback from last Friday night. So this is the first one we did. Just a little elevation study here, and again, notice wings dropped, and then wings lifted. Again, with those very strong, pardon me for a moment here, those very strong vertical engine systems. That's what we talked about last week. And what do you think, Shadow? Since I'm just kind of going through a review here for you. What do you think? So far, so good? Making sense? I'll just hang on here for a second here. Make sure you love the cockpit. you didn't get top. But yeah, I think that's the one. I think it's going to be the winner. That's the interesting piece here. So as we went through this process, Shannon, a lot of the feedback was the engine systems, they prefer to see them going much more horizontal, which to me it makes a lot of sense. I think it's really interesting on that old put, yes, but very slick. I think the wings should fold all the way up if they can. Okay. Yeah, the cockpit, the up cockpit is awesome. Looks like the sunshades. Yeah, it just it brings it all together. That whole idea of having that brow on top of it. So there we are. That was the first pass we did. It was really interesting. I just want to challenge myself to see what that thing would look like if we pulled the wings back on this thing. So notice how full this is, and that's swept back, and then how very little we see over on this side here. So again, a little variation on theme here. Again, looking at this, and I think we'll look at this as a view, for example, to kind of feel into and peel into space. Then the last one we did here was just a little bit of a reverse 3/4, which is okay. I just really felt like it gets a little bit clumsy in through here, so I have to refine that a little bit more. Nemo, yeah, the cockpit is awesome. Yeah, there you go. And so that took care of that. And for what it's worth here, I went back into this shadow, into this, and did again little front 3/4 with that same kind of stance to it. I mean, the engine nacelles and the dihedrals in an up position, long, real uphill California drag look to it. It was kind of neat. So that was that one. Then we went to some plan view studies, a little bit busy in some areas, but getting closer to something like this where you beef up the body form a bit and get a little more segmentation. And especially some of the feedback from the gang here, but getting this tail section to actually articulate and move and rotate. That's really cool. Rotates right and left and also up and down. So there we are there. That goes in there. Then I did a 3/4 front. Pardon me, 3/4 front view about what it looks like in view here. With the dihedrals uphill, and they will move. So that was a 3/4 study. I'm looking at these now in terms of going down the line just a bit, trying to anticipate what a final composition might look like. The right view, once we get all the pieces put together for the actual finished print piece that we're going to generate next week after Friday's show, Shadow. So that was one approach at it. There's another one here. A little bit tighter view, and just kind of restricts it a little bit. I really don't care for that guy too much. It's a little bit, just don't shoot the hydrals. Don't shoot the hydrals off the turret. No, we won't do that. So there we are. And this guy here, a little closer, opens it up. I still think we need to beat this area back in through here to kind of get more girth to it, and give me more of that horizontal look of the engine nacelles to see what we've got there. So there's another view added here. Is this the baby version? Yeah, this is the little guy. So then we have this guy where it goes into an area here where we're actually going to dive this thing. And I think this is the view I'd like to work with here in terms of never bad. This is the view I like in terms of we'll beef some things up and make some changes to it again, give it more character to it. But I think this is the view I'd like to really kind of explore for further reference in terms of putting together the final composition. So there we are with that study. And the last one we did here in Shadow was this guy. Just kind of open this up a bit more. That's kind of a nice look to it here. It comes back on much longer, narrower engine systems, oversized, a lot more horizontal, gives it more of a presence and stance. But I think that kind of look is really interesting here. So let me stop here for a moment and get some feedback from you guys on the stream here. What do you think? Is it close? Much stronger? Getting close. Very good, Chip. Thank you. I think we're getting real close here. I think we're just, yeah. I feel it all right. Yeah, much better than the squared intakes. Yeah, I think there's something about this that just really kind of, it goes back to that original sketch we did on Friday night, Shadow. And this is one of the things, the consensus. It wasn't really the upstanding winner here, but I think it had a lot of content in terms of, let's see if I can get one on top of the other. There we are. Yeah, that look. Again, with that same, this is a lot more droop to it. It's a little more longer, and it has a little more length to it, and it really stretches the engine out a little bit more. So, yes, the lean intakes look great. Yeah, I think that looks a whole lot healthier. There's something about that it's much more insect-like. It's a lot more lethal looking, and a lot more, I think, nefarious. So I think the intakes are kind of cool. Once we get all the other pieces put together here in the right view, and then these dihedrals behind it make a lot more sense. We get that right view. Make this really begin to tell a great story when we start to put together. Especially this, we'll modify this view and get this guy put together with that more of an overhead shot at this thing, like an attack mode where we stretch this thing out and get a lot more drop to it and some sweep to it as well. So there we are, gang. That's about the content for today in terms of putting together the process. Really appreciate the input thus far. It's just great to get a lot of bantering back and forth about where we've been and what we're going through with this whole idea, with this really rough sketches being to look like. I think we're getting a lot closer with some of this character to it. And again, with this turret in the rear section, cockpit I think is solid. So I think we've got some good pieces to work with here, guys. Let's see, Shadowkin wide intakes actually up low speed lift as well, creating a nice, yeah, that's right, that's right. So that's, and also too, Shadow's going to make it a lot more practical to kind of move them in the fashion we want to move them. Maybe the brake line is here, they move up and down, and they go back as well. So it's going to give a little more flexibility there. Very good. So, any comments in closing here while we wrap the program up today, gang? I really appreciate the time here. I agree, lots of forward movement. Yeah, lots for movement. So, anybody, any closing comments, yays and nays, likes and dislikes? Looking pretty good. I think this really helped to kind of get might really help me, gang. Thanks a lot. Really helped me today with the input you brought, not only last Friday night, but again today, about some of the refinements we've moved toward. All likes in terms of putting together pieces to really kind of assemble this thing now and really attack it from the point of view of being a really good attack vehicle. And I still think it'd be kind of neat, one last request here for Shadow and the rest of the gang who tuned in. Still looking for a really good name. I'm just calling it the QuadraWing because of the 4-wing system, but that's not going to and have a thumbs on you, and I'm all thumbs. You're not all thumbs at all. Manticore, that's the one that was brought up on Friday night, right, Shadow? Manticore, that's a pretty cool name. So let me jot that down. Manticore, very cool. So is that the winner, or is that just part of the love that name? It's very fitting as well. Chat seemed to love that. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Shadow. I forgot about that. Manticore seems like to be the winner. The Manticore has a certain ring to it as well. It doesn't sound. It sounds like it's something out of another alien world altogether. So that's good. We'll decide Friday night live on the air. Yeah, that'd be a good vote process to see what we come up with here. But here again, gang, Manticore gets my vote. I think that's very good, Nemo. I'm glad you tuned in on that one. How about you, Chip? You still there? Manticore. That sounds like a great name to me. Last Friday night I forgot about that when it was brought up. That really sounded like a great name to work with. Chip, it's a word. That it is. And last but not least, Shadowkin. Haha, very good. How about you, Doug? You still with us? Any comment about that? Chip 7 loves you, man. Very good. Excellent stuff, guys. So here again, there's a journey for today. I just wanted to bring this back up. I wanted to use today to kind of go back and throw a little bit of a refresher about where we were on Friday night last week. Great program in Shadow's den of absolute screen city. It was overwhelming, for example, to be there and watch that thing operate. It was just a real treat to be part of the process and work with him, obviously. And I really enjoyed the feedback on the program on Friday night. Now we're going to take this into this Friday evening with a little more content in terms of where the final theme is going to look like. How many exclamation points after Manticore? Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to look it up. But again, thanks so much for the time spent today, gang. Great input. Always enjoy the conversation back and forth. And I didn't do a lot of drawing today. It was much more for me to kind of review some things about where we were today, where we were, for example, last Friday night with some content, and then reviewed it today as far as taking a little bit further with some of the views, the selections like front elevations and over at 3/4 and so forth, and doing this little rough study. I think this little rough study said a lot in terms of what the consensus might be in the end run. So very good, gang. Hope all is well with you. Thank you so much for taking the time here. Thank Doc. Looking forward to having you again for the last show on. Yeah, me too. It's going to be really cool. Thanks very much, gang. And really interesting to kind of. I'll spend a little bit of time maybe tomorrow going through some things we talked about today in sketch form, and then maybe Thursday do a little bit more refinement, and then save the emphasis for Friday night with. The Shadow Man over his studio, so it'll be a lot of fun. So thanks very much, everybody. Enjoyed the conversation. Great input. Thanks for the time and effort. And again, I always sign off with this. Oh, by the way, too, please visit my website at drcontrast.com. And please, I have one request. I'd love to have you pass my name along in terms of where I am as far as the Twitch system. And although I might not be able to watch it, really be interested to go to drcontrast.com. If you have interest at all in drawing, or if you have friends who want to see my program, please pass my name along. I'd love to have them join us on my chat, on my Twitch system. really appreciate that, gang. So pass it along. Doug Ritt, very good, Doug. So the surgery was successful. I felt the same way, Doug. So thanks for tuning in. Always good to have you on board. And last but not least, always remember, please, if you haven't, oh, by the way, too, if you have things you want me to work on, or maybe you have some questions or something, things to address from a sketch rendering or drawing process, feel free to drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. Be happy to respond and help you all I can. And last but not least, I will end the stream because that's the most important part of the day as far as I'm concerned. And I really sincerely mean this all the way through from beginning to end. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Dare to be great. It really makes a huge difference. And thanks again for tuning in. All the very best here, gang. And anybody, any closing commentary at all before we sign off? Dare to be great because you are. That's exactly correct, Shadow. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Any comments at all? Great content today, guys. I mean, it really means a lot to me in terms of getting feedback from you all in terms of where we are in the process here, because it really helps to refine it, because there's nothing worse than being a lonely voice. That becomes a real danger area. You've got to have that good impact at all times. Really interesting. Thank you, Shadow, for joining in. You're busy with a lot of meetings and so forth, and glad to have you on board here. And so once again, take care. Have a great day, gang, and all the very best to all of you. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Hey, you as well, Nemo. By the way, I'm really glad you're on board. I know it's a sacrifice for you time-wise. So thanks so much for taking the time to join us. It's always a treat to have you on board. Love your input. I love the commentary you make, as you as well, Chip, Shadow, Doug. Very helpful all the way through. So take care of yourself, gang. Have a terrific day, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully about 4 o'clock. Thank you. All the best, and dare to be great. Bye-bye.